Our drivers last week got thrown into small cars at a small track. Tiny, tight, and technical, Concord showed itself to be a tough one. Tonight, they flipped things around, and it's big, heavy cars at a big, fast track. Charlotte should show who can make the transition from short track to mile-and-a-halfer as we get ready to watch round 2 of the South Sound Speedway's E-Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Gary Weaver. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Charlotte Motor Speedway has hosted stock car racing for more than half a century now. This track has become emblematic of American ovals. To introduce our audience, let's head to our track guide.
Welcome everybody to the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Even though it was built more than 4 decades ago, drivers still love to race at this mile-and-a-half quad-shaped oval. Located just a short 13-mile drive from downtown, Charlotte also shares a similar track shape to what you would see at the Texas Motor Speedway and the Atlanta Motor Speedway as well. Despite turns 1 and 2 having the same banking as turns 3 and 4, the two ends of the speedway could not drive any different. Turn 1 and 2 are much more of a sweeping corner, really carrying the speed down into the corner and trying to get that hole shot out of turn 2 down the backstretch. Turns 3 and 4 drive much tighter than 1 and 2, really having to get the car to rotate in the middle of 3 and 4 to make your entry and your exit point. Getting a lap in around here in one piece usually requires some calm nerves and a patient foot. Charlotte was one of the first speedways to install lights around the facility, giving night racing a whole new berth. Charlotte is also known for its place in the perfect day of racing every Memorial Day, acting as the caboose after the Monaco Grand Prix and the Indianapolis 500. If Daytona is the pinnacle of NASCAR racing, then Charlotte has to be just a bumper behind. Fans flock to the largest sports facility in the Southeast and NASCAR's home track. This has been our guide to the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Normally, when we talk about Charlotte Motor Speedway, Gary, we think about the Cup cars, we think about the trucks, the Xfinity series. Today, it's the street stocks. What's it going to be like with this combination?
That's absolutely incredible. It's been, as far as I know, known in the rookie side of iRacing for the past about 7.5 years from even when I've been here with this mile-and-a-half track. It's just absolutely incredible. Full throttle, practically bumper to bumper every single lap. It's so much fun. It's almost a little bit of an early practice type of racing towards super speedway racing later on in the service in the cup cars.
Yeah, I remember doing these a number of years ago myself, and it being addictive fun, but also frustrating at times. Now, before we get to some of the other stuff happening out on track, I want to remind you that this series is brought to you by Key Pop Property Services. Key Property Services Incorporated is a locally owned full service property management, real estate, and construction contracting company. KPS has been serving the greater Clark County area for over 30 years. For more information, visit kpsinc.net. Key Property Services, where service is the key. It's also brought to you by United Roofs. As specialists in residential and commercial roofing services, they've dedicated to providing customer service that is second to none. Whether you have a new construction project or it's time for repairs, they offer the roofing services you need. To learn how to book a free estimate, go to unitedroofs.com. Now, let's take a look at the driver standings after our first week. Travis Barnes up at the top of the points, and with it being only one round down, it's pretty close from everybody on to fifth. Gill with a tie between Johnson Jr. and White back there in third. You got Garber, P. Ford, Chris Torres rounding out the top five. We'll see if today shakes that up with how different it is. We have race details as well for today. Gary, what are our viewers in for?
Today, the viewers are in for round number 2 of a total of 12. So after this race, it will be 10 races left. Of course, the drivers here utilizing, at least in this race, the street stocks, always very well known, a long-time car here on the iRacing service. The race will be 65 laps, everybody running the exact same setup, and one faster pair is available if needed. So aside from the 65 laps, as opposed to, I believe, the 20 laps that the rookies get, it's much like one of the rookie series.
The drivers right now are out there just simply practicing before we get a 5-minute qualifying. That also is going to be fascinating since this is fixed setup, seeing who can eke that little bit of speed out of these cars. There's a lot more room to race, though, than what we saw at Concord Speedway. And it's 14 cars around this track with spaces that you can move up and down as well. Certainly not down across someone, as we just saw from Sean Jones there in the double aught. But, I mean, since this is like super speedway racing, Gary, is that kind of the approach that you need to take? Is it worth trying to hang out in the back, or is this something where you do actually want to try and move to the front as quickly as possible?
It's a little bit different, of course, with this being the quad oval instead of your traditional Talladega or Daytona superspeedway racing, especially with this being street stocks, where down the back straightaway, you're getting about 145, 150 miles an hour, even in the draft, about 160 at times as well. And it's something to definitely keep an eye on. This track is for the plan of the race. Usually, it's just trying to hang on, just run everything as you can, and of course try and get up to the front as soon as possible. But with everybody usually utilizing that inside lane, the only passing opportunity where you might be able to peek your nose is right here on the entry to turn 1, or even throughout the quad oval.
Well, that certainly has its own perils, and hopefully it won't cause too many cautions throughout the day, because we have to go through 65 laps out here as we're watching AJ Williamson, currently the fastest driver in warm-up, going underneath Dichinowski, excuse me, and the number 18. Just 2 minutes left here in the warm-up. Should be a fun one, should be a completely different challenge. I'm really looking forward to this series, Gary, with the fact that the drivers have to hop into so many different types of cars. Now, it's mostly oval racing, obviously, but I mean, for an audience that doesn't usually follow this type of racing, there really are the differences between the different types of ovals and different types of cars.
Yeah, it's kind of gives at sometimes with some races on the service a little bit of a, I guess the appropriate term would be more of a underground feeling. The less common types of races that you compared to what you usually see on pretty much just throughout the entire service. Usually, of course, it's ovals with NASCAR that of course, everyone usually knows about. But when it comes to this, it gives a little bit of an insight to a little bit more cars on the service, as well as just how much fun you really can have without or throughout these different car and track combinations.
Certainly does. And the good thing to see here is that it looks like drivers are trying different lines around the circuit just to get used to what it's going to be like off of that optimal line. You can see Andy Johnson, the 43, trying to take it 3 wide, and it doesn't look like it's going to go well for the 23 as Jeff Peterson has to catch it across the quad oval. That sends Ryan McLeod down onto the apron, just abandoning, hoping not to get involved in that wreck. But everybody comes out the other side, so good learning lesson, I'm sure, for all involved. 30 seconds left to go. I do not see Barnes here today. So who is your eye on, Gary? Who do you think is someone that could have a good shot at it?
Well, I would say Isaiah Gill. Of course, he is in the second place position coming into the points here tonight, but unfortunately, he is second to last on the timing table, sitting at 13th, unfortunately. So, not the best practice run, at least for him, and we'll hope that qualifying is going to be a little bit better.
Yeah, he didn't put too many laps in, just about 4 of them. And his first was his quickest, curiously. So maybe Gill has more up his sleeve. Maybe he's holding his cards close to his chest. We'll find out pretty soon because qualifying has just begun. And looking to see if we get anybody out on track, as it appears that Andy Johnson is going to be the first to take off. Now, they have static weather here today, so nothing is going to change. It's 81 degrees Fahrenheit here late in the day at Charlotte Motor Speedway. There's no clouds that you can take advantage of. This is down to who can get the smoothest lap out, Gary.
That smoothest lap will be key, and much like super speedway racing, of course, you usually want to run the inside lane here at Charlotte, or you can just run the essentially traditional lane, which is of course arcing up throughout the track itself. But well, with this track being low line, the primary low line being ran, well, everyone usually wants to run that. So 2 laps here for everybody, as well as Andy Johnson, who starts his lap. He's taking the higher lane, interestingly enough, maybe trying something out to see what will and what won't work throughout the race.
We keep comparing it to Dega and Daytona, and don't they usually try to run high on the super speedways on the first lap just to kind of wind the car up? Maybe he's aiming for that second one.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. He's more than likely, knowing super speedway racing, going to arc down throughout the quad oval and then run the low line. So we'll see if he does that as he comes across the start finish line momentarily. First lap, not always the best lap, especially when he runs the high line or when anyone runs the high line. 37.334. He's currently the fastest. Well, right when I say that, well, Matthew goes up top to the top of the board, and well, just like that, Johnson does go to the inside.
He's going to try it. So I haven't been watching anybody else to see if they're also doing that high line method. As we see Sean Jones come across his first lap, only good enough for 7th. Let's see if Andy Johnson, the first one on that second lap, has found more speed. 37.3 becomes a 36.9. And that is going to put him into second place. Eric Johnson, still our quickest.
Now, something that I'm looking at as the realization just hits me, Isaiah Gill set a 36.936 in practice. Now, that doesn't seem fast as he's running the top line currently. As now Eric Johnson Jr. goes up to the top of the board with a 36.8 as drivers start to make their rounds. Well, Isaiah Gill again, 36.936. He's currently about 10th off at least in comparison from his lap time in practice to Johnson's pole time now. So maybe that time wasn't as bad as we thought.
He's going to get a lap in here. Let's see what this first one is. Eric Johnson looked like he's not going to be able to be caught, as his first 2 laps are both quick enough for pole. Gill, though, His first lap, a 37.5. Now he ducks down to the low line as we see the 99 put his first lap in. Chris Torres slots it into 8th position. We're just waiting on Christopher White and Bryce Bead to get a time down as A.J. Williamson up to the front row ahead of Andy Johnson.
That's going to be something to very much keep an eye on as the 7 of Bead goes up to the 8th place position. And the only 2 drivers left to finish up their run is going to be this one. The 24 of Isaiah Gill crosses the start-finish line. A 36.819 pole position at the moment. Does Christopher White beat that time? I don't believe so. We'll see as he crosses the start-finish line.
And that was his first time lap. A 36.9, though, that's good enough for 7th on his first lap. That's very good for the 83. He could challenge Bryce Bead up for his second timed run. It is going to be a 36.9. That'll put him in P8, just behind White, who are the last 2 now on track. Christopher in the 83. Can he get ahead of Isaiah Gill? Fastest lap for him is a 36.819. Down and to the timing line is the black, white, and red car. Comes across. It's a 36.942. And that is not going to do it. He stays in 7th, unfortunately. Our qualifying is done here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So let's go through our starting order. Isaiah Gill, you picked him out, Gary, and I'd say that was a good pick because he's got the pole over Eric Johnson. He'll start in 2nd with A.J. Williamson in P3. To his outside is going to be Andy Johnson starting 4th. Dichinowski starts in P5, followed by Jeff Peterson in the 6th position. Christopher White, good enough for 7th, flanked by Bryce Bead in P8. Chris Torres starts in 9th today. And rounding out the top 10, Gary, it's going to be Ryan McLeod.
Number 13 of Scott Degenstein starts in that 11th place position. Derek Presley starts off in 12th, and Sean Jones rounds out the 13-car field for this race tonight. Would be 14, but unfortunately 76 not able to race, possibly due to maybe hardware issues for all we know, unfortunately.
You can see them gritting up now as they're going to peel off the front stretch and take a single pace lap around for round 2 of the South Sound Speedway E-Series. If you missed the first week, this is not the cars they were driving. They were in the Legends, the tiny little things that are introductory cars, both in real life and here in iRacing. And they took them around Concord Speedway. So this is certainly a test of their versatility. So you can see all those beautiful street stocks lined up. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't this the street stock owned by Dale Earnhardt Jr. that they brought into the service?
That is correct, actually. And the thing is, as a result of that, I do remember very vividly, because I said it at one point as well, that iRacing did add the, I believe it was one of Junior's branch, the Dale Jr. logo for, I believe, the Dale Jr. Foundation. I may be incorrect on that, but I do know it was Dale Jr. related into the iRacing paint shop as a result of that. So this car has definitely been around for a very long time, and it's still an absolute blast to drive.
See, we should get going pretty soon here with everybody out there. Looks like it was, I think it was JR Motorsports was the sponsor that you can pick. And I think you still can pick that if I
You can,
correctly.
yes.
Yeah. Didn't see anybody out here sporting that quite yet, but maybe we don't have any junior fans with us. Now we get the very magic Mustang pace car floating off on to start his pace lap. Everybody follows behind. Be interesting to see them get up to speed as well. These aren't super powerful cars, Gary. So, I imagine maybe about 2 laps before they really get up to full song?
I'd say just about 2 laps, at least 1 complete lap for sure. And then once they start that second lap, that's when they'll be at full force. So it definitely takes a little bit to get going, much like, well, the Cup cars and pretty much the NASCAR series in general when it comes to super speedways. But that shows a little bit of relation in the sense and how that these cars can actually help you up practice for the later series.
All right. It's Isaiah Gill who's going to have control of the field here soon. Just a reminder for those not familiar, they are not allowed to race below that blue and white line at the bottom of the banking. They can get below it, but if they gain any positions, they will be penalized by the live stewards we have here today. Got to keep it clean out there. As the Mustang pace car gets ready to peel in, there he goes. Waiting for Gill to accelerate. He's holding them back. And now he's on the loud pedal. Green flag is out for round 2 of the South Sound Speedway E-Series. Great jump by the 24 of Gill. Johnson already flanked on either side, and that's Williamson and Andy Johnson. Oh, and Andy's going to have to drift up very high as he finds the 14 down below him of Eric Johnson Jr.
And just like that sorted out, AJ Williamson moves up to the outside lane, saying, well, you know what, I could sit behind you, but I'd rather try and challenge for the lead myself. Now, it could be possible to do so if you take the corner just right, but at the same time, it is incredibly difficult to get an outside pass done here. So, as demonstrated by Isaiah Gill, the inside lane is the best lane. Eric Johnson Jr. sitting directly behind him as well.
And he's unfortunately closed off the opening for the number 2. So Williamson is going to have to slot down now if he so desires, and he does. He'll get in front of Peterson in P4. In fact, it's looking very single file behind him, other than the number 18 of Duchanovsky in 7th. Oh, and as soon as I say that, Williamson decides he wants to try the high side again, but he gets very loose. And actually, a little bit of a nudge from the 14 of Eric Johnson Jr. moves Isaiah Gill up the lane. And now the 14 has the desired line.
And this is pretty much a battle for the points positions as well. Isaiah Gill sitting second coming into this race here, as well as Eric Johnson Jr. sitting just about 5 points behind, give or take, in that number 14. So these two are essentially battling for what's going to be the first place position and points after this.
Check up behind them is the 23 of Peterson. Going to play patient back there. The bottom line filling up as the top line is holding on, but losing a little bit of ground here and there. That is Gill up at the top side in the number 24. You see with the silver paint scheme, falls back the longer track up on the higher banking. Now he starts to pull him back in with a shot off the corner. But he's only going to get slightly ahead before it repeats all over again. 43 behind them, starting to drop back. Andy Johnson deciding to lift a little bit into 3.
Quite an interesting idea, deciding to lift. And well, of course, much like super speedway racing, you're going to have to get off the back bumper of the car in front of you at some point. But from what I can remember, of course, that well, the cooling, it's not as different as it is from the main NASCAR series. You can sit behind somebody for quite some time, but of course, usually these cars are not really bumper to bumper or nose to tail all the time, so you do get a lot of adequate cooling. And looking interestingly enough, the 23 of Jeff Peterson giving a lot of space on entry turn number 3, maybe trying to drag the brake and get a little bit of a run.
So I'm kind of curious, because could you potentially try and bump draft to get a little bit of a run? The front of the car looks like it's got that little peak on it where it's not perfectly flat, so I would worry about how well they hook up.
Well, you can try, and the 2, well, immediately demonstrates that. So, yes, it is possible, although it is not without its own faults. You'd have to be incredibly careful when it comes to bump drafting on the back straightaway, and preferably only the back straightaway. But now, well, unfortunately, the outside lane doesn't really get back going, but Williamson definitely showing he's willing to push that 24 machine, and maybe a little bit too much there throughout that quad oval exit. And that could be one of the issues that you face when it comes to bump drafting.
2 very distinct lanes forming. And it's evenly split between them, interestingly. It's about 9 cars up at the front of the field. We dropped Dagenstein, Jones, Presley, and McLeod from this group. Them well far back from the slipstream, heading down low. Now that he sees an opening, Isaiah Gill says, I hate that top side. I'm going to come down and join you.
Now this leaves the 2 outside. Not exactly all on his own, but now it's 3 cars up top, being Williamson and the 2 of the 43 of Johnson, as well as the 99 of Chris Torres. And, well, a great view of the back bumper from on board Isaiah Gill, just looking back at Eric Johnson Jr.'s back bumper. Very great back bumper there as well. Quite interesting as well, but Johnson Jr. doing a great job as well. Going back to the outside now is Isaiah Gill. He wants to try another shot at it.
Gill got a little bit of run, but already the opportunity to get low is taken away from him by A.J. Williamson. I can't say that the 14's back bumper instills much faith in me if I was reading that. And Gill not giving this one up. Got to give him credit for being determined. The bottom line starting to fill up with more cars. The 23 thinks about getting up high. In fact, he gets a little bit loose there. It's Jeff Peterson and the red and the yellow getting slightly squirrely.
Tried to move up and then decided against it, moved it back down and loosened the car up just a little bit. And it is possible, if you somehow try hard enough, or if you push the car hard enough, I should say, to loosen up the car, as it's a little bit close between the right front fender as well as the left rear fender of both Andy Johnson and Jeff Peterson over there on turn 1 entry. But look at this, 3 wide to the inside. AJ Williamson going to go and make it 3 wide for the lead.
The 2 spied an opportunity, and he took it in a heartbeat as Johnson Jr. has no place to go but up. Tries to get back down low, still looking 3 wide as Isaiah Gill is stuck on the very top side of this trio. Now he starts to fall back, but he's going to get tipped. Tries to hold on to the car. That was the 43 that got a piece of him, Andy Johnson.
I swear, they're wrecking in the way from about turn 3 all the way throughout to the exit of the quad oval straightaway. That is incredible driving to hang on to that as well, and that shows just how fun these cars can be. It's that you're able to make it through while you're able to make some moves that you may not always be able to make. And well, we just saw that demonstrated by the 2 of Williamson doing an incredible job making it 3 wide. And well, that goes back to what I mentioned. Usually you can peek out to the inside here because there are 2 lower lanes essentially on the quad oval exit going into turn number 1. But well, down the back straightaway, if you think you have enough space, you can go for it. But now Eric Johnson Jr. has actually dragged the brakes a little bit, made his way back, and now he's going to try and make a run at it. But unfortunately, the 2 still being a little bit defensive.
And Bede gets to the inside of Peterson, going to demote him a spot. Ooh, the cars are starting to look a little bit shaky. Now, I'm guessing we're not likely to have green flag stops here, as it takes a long time for these cars to take pit stops, but they do have 2 sets of tires if need be. Oh, and this might be a caution here. The 23 shoved up high. He brushes the wall, but he's able to keep going. Jeff Peterson at the very back of the field now.
And they just hang on to it. So Chris Torres and the 18 of Dekanowski also made a little bit of contact off turn 2. They hung on to it as well.
I mentioned it was getting sketchy as we come back to our leaders once again. AJ Williamson on the top spot from 3rd on the grid, leading Eric Johnson Jr. Bryce Bede now behind them in the 3rd spot, still working the high side. This is the 83 of Christopher White that you can get a peek of.
Looking out that back windshield right now, just seeing everything going on, what could possibly be going on in the mirror, just like that pass opportunity that Eric Johnson Jr. tries to make up on the outside, although he doesn't have anybody directly behind him. Look at this, the 7 of Bryce Bede started 8th, is now in 3rd place, trying to make his run for the lead.
So on the high side, Eric Johnson Jr. did not like being shuffled back into P2. He wants the clear air once again. He's got to get to working with the 83 back behind him, see if he could get a run, although he's going to have to compete about the double horsepower of Bryce Bead giving a nice push to AJ Williamson as well.
And the fun thing is, these cars are able to give and take a few shots here and there, especially with the dirt street stock variation, but even the asphalt street stock variation. So it is absolutely incredible to see, a little bit of rubbing and racing, as well as a few bumps here and there, of course, in good sports. And while we see that in terms of bump drafts going on here down the back straightaway, it is absolutely incredible. And in a sense, it may seem on paper similar to super speedway racing, but here it's just that bit different.
Cars certainly handled differently from what we've seen. Still 2x2 amongst the top four. I think it's a little bit messy behind them. Our pole sitter, Isaiah Gill, is very loose. Can he catch the car? Oh, and he's into the wall. We've got our first caution of the day. Andy Johnson is the one that is caught up with him. And and he comes back onto the racing line just as the other cars are coming across. Who was that we lost there?
I think that was the 4 of Derek Presley who spun into pit road.
We're going to watch Gill. And that was Presley. You're correct. And the 4 that suddenly spun off to the inside.
He almost hung on to it as well, and such a shame. The 4-3 was just in the wrong place, wrong time.
There he goes, flying across the grass. Everybody else managed to get out of the way. I'm going to watch from his perspective. Probably going to be a little bit blindsided. Yeah, because there's a double lot in front of him. You can see a little bit of smoke. Oh, he got shoved. That looked like he got a big boost from behind.
And he did. Fortunately, though, he was able to keep it off the pit road wall on the inside.
All right, they've been picked up by the pace car here on lap 19, lap 18, actually. So we'll get some time to get going. In your current order, when that yellow was thrown, it was Williamson, Johnson Jr., Bead, White, and Torres for your top 5. Well, that was an interesting first stint here, Gary. We saw a lot of fascinating races. We saw some aggressive moves. We saw some patient moves. And I think we're starting to get a sense of how these drivers want to tackle this thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible to see. It brings back a few memories from racing in the street stocks as well. I just love this. I haven't driven these in quite some time, but now, of course, this is doing its job, and it makes me want to drive these again. So I think after this, I might take a few laps here and there, but it's there's the way these guys are racing is amazing. The way they're able to hang on to the cars, the way they're able to make it 3 wide if you're AJ Williamson for one. It's great. It's very entertaining, and we're only 18 laps in out of 65.
By the way, we've got Isaiah Gill back out on track. He took his free repair. They do have one spare car waiting in the pits if they get damage. But now he's under the gun. If that happens again, he's just got to have to take the time and be patient. As do we have any stops? We got a couple fakers and no takers. Oh, except for John Jones.
So John Jones decides to go into a pit road while everyone else stays. Or sorry, Sean Jones goes into pit road. Everyone else decides to stay out. I'm wondering what the plan could be here. If it is tires, well, he's going to be sitting there for a huge majority of this caution period.
These street stocks feel like they're filled, their fuel is filled with a straw, so hopefully he won't have to wait at all for that. He is going to take tires, one of his 2 sets that he has waiting. That is in addition to the one that is on the car when they start. He can only take 1 more stop for tires. After that, he is out of fresh rubber.
So interestingly, at this point, he's pretty much used that set, so we'll see how this really benefits him. Maybe he was having a few issues during the main section, so the last portion of the race. So this might help out as he continues to sit and wait for quite some time before fuel, but he'll definitely get out in time before the pace car comes back around.
I'm not sure if it's fuel, because I don't think they need fuel to make it to the end of this race. Could be getting tires, unless he accidentally left fuel checked and doesn't know how to end it early. You can do that, but Not sure of his experience here with the iRacing sim, and I think he will go a lap down here. Oh, there he goes. Now he's going.
Well, he might. We'll see how close this will be on pit exit. And he is able to get out before the pit road has closed.
There's some debate amongst the stewards and Chris Torres, who was given a EOL penalty for being involved in the incident. They penalized drivers who are the cause of the cautions. Apparently, Torres is a little bit upset about it. All right. We're getting ready to go once again, restarting on lap 21. All 13 cars still out on track. The racing has been tight and exciting out here in the first third of this race. What are we going to get for the next 2/3? Especially now that we've got potentially Isaiah Gill on fresh tires and Sean Jones as well on fresh rubber. Will that make much of a difference as they pick up the pace? They're going to have to follow the control of the number 2 of AJ Williamson. The Mustang pace car now releases them. Williamson waits. He waits a while. He's given it a long time, and now he gets on the loud pedal. The number 2 accelerates away. We're green once again here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Johnson Jr. immediately down to the bottom side as Bryce Bead holds on behind him, denying a chance for Christopher White to get down low. He's going to have to wait until after Dichinowski in the number 18.
45 laps to go. Car up in the outside wall in the background. We'll see who that is really quickly. It looks to be actually the 88 of Ryan McLeod, unfortunately, in the outside wall of turn number 2. Able to hang on to it, able to get back going, and single file throughout your top 3. Meanwhile, it's Christopher White and the 18 of Matthew. Well, I had him before. I had the pronunciation, unfortunately, but 18 sitting proud on that inside lane. Christopher White trying to hang on, but unfortunately getting shuffled back.
Dichinowski in the number 18, who's got himself up into 4th. We're going to go 3 wide. No, we might have a challenge for the lead, actually, because the 14 is once again seeing if he can do anything around the outside of the 2.
He might be able to do so. A little bit of paint has been scraped off there throughout turn number 4, but both of them able to continue on. And look at that. At the line, he's able to lead the lap, and that's by about 0.018 seconds at that start-finish line. And, well, it's definitely possible now for sure to get that run on the outside. You just have to time it incredibly, incredibly well. 14 did.
7-car breakaway, but behind them, it's Isaiah Gill with clear air, seeing if he can catch up to them so that he doesn't lose out on the battle for the lead. Still, it looks like Johnson Jr. doesn't have much on the long way past AJ Williamson, continues to challenge him. If it comes down to it, though, I have to wonder, Gary, can you get the shot off of turn 4 and just snake him to the line?
That might be possible, as apparently in the background, the 13 had unfortunate issues. Got a little bit loose off the corner and hit the outside wall. He's able to continue going forward, although maybe not without any suspension damage, as trying to defend for the lead is AJ Williamson. And just 1 lap ago, as we had that onboard shot from Bryce Speed, you usually like to see drivers battling in front of you side by side, but it's usually not the case here at this track, because that outside, well, middle lane in this case, is really the lane that you want to try and make a run for.
So we had another car hitting the wall. I could hear it. I think that was Dagenstein again, struggling here today. He keeps it going, so no caution. The bad news for Eric Johnson Jr. is the car trying to push him, White, has been blinking a lot these last few laps. Thankfully, he didn't there when he got up to his rear bumper, drifting up a little bit high. The number 2 opened the door for a brief moment, and Bede tried to step through before it got slammed shut.
unfortunately for Dagenstein, while that 13 on the car number does not help in any way at all, and well, it's showing that, well, it's very unlucky. Dagenstein at the moment out of the race, but he does, I believe, have at least one more faster pair available to him. So he's not done and out quite yet, although he will have to sit and wait for the virtual tow crew to tow him through the infield back to his pit box.
Boy, they've already brought Isaiah Gill up to this group, and he's towing along Presley and Torres. So it's up to 10 cars in the front pack. Can Gill weave his way through this group and start vying for the top spot? He's got plenty of laps left to do it, so he has time to be patient.
I think someone who's a little bit starting to get a little bit impatient would be that 7 of Bryce Speed. He does have a little bit of room, and he tries to go to the inside. I was going to say, I don't know if he was actually trying to go to the inside or maybe trying to back off a little bit or take a peek to the inside, but I was going to say there was about half a car width available to that 7 machine to try and peek his way down to the inside on the back straightaway.
That wasn't him looking. That was Dichinowski getting a little bit of the piece of his bumper, almost causing him to lose control. Thankfully, he backed off of it. Looks like some of them calming down a little bit, pulling away from one another. Why don't we crank it up and listen to what it's like with these old-fashioned street stocks wailing around Charlotte Motor Speedway? Sounds of iRacing. But while the front 4 have been doubled up for a while there, we had the rest of the pack behind them all in a pretty straight line. That's changed since then, and it looks like part of it is Isaiah Gill getting overtaken by Derek Presley, interestingly, as the number 4 moves himself up into 7th. We heard some radio chatter on our end with Christopher White and Eric Johnson talking a little bit, saying, let's go, let's go. He wants him to try and push him forward, but just doesn't seem to have the oomph.
I think Bryce Speed definitely has the oomph to push AJ Williamson. He was all over that back bumper out of turn number 4 that time by. And, well, if you're someone who's mid-pack, I was going to say, well, if you're someone who's mid-pack, you'd be wondering, well, how long are they going to stay side by side? Isaiah Gill got a little bit loose on the exit of that quality.
The 7's underneath. The 7 is underneath. It looks like Bryce Speed. Oh, and he gets into AJ, who gets into the 14. Do we have the big one here? A few cars getting involved. The double lot is in there, and the caution is out yet again. It looks like the worst of it went to Jeff Peterson, who smashes the inside wall in the 23. Eric Johnson Jr. takes a big hit as well.
There's just a huge chin reaction. Peterson comes to a dead stop. Luckily, no severe engine damage, but all damage nonetheless. And it's about a 5-car crash there throughout turns 3 and 4. So we brought it on board Isaiah Gill to see what he saw in front of him.
And there's a second group that has problems that you'll see here from above. That involves Torres, Presley, and Christopher White. There you see it. They're up at the top of the screen.
Wonderful avoidance by Isaiah Gill.
Oh, yeah. He did a beautiful job seeing everything coming, just woed it up enough to be able to weave through. Oh, almost avoided it there, Christopher White. But he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. We're seeing a lot of cars now duck in to take those free repairs, I assume.
Jeff Peterson was able to get in the pit road under his own power, but that fuel And unfortunately, this period will put him at least one lap down. Now that pit road exit has temporarily closed, and it looks like just timing it right as well. Right when pit road opens, Peter gets going. So this is going to be now the first time that we've seen these lead cars. Andy Johnson actually takes fuel only.
As they get back out onto the track, we're going to take a quick break. We're halfway through round 2 here of the South Sound Speedway E-Series. Stick around for the last of this race here at Charlotte in the street stocks. Welcome back to Charlotte Motor Speedway. Round 2 for the South Sound Speedway E-Series is being led by Sean Jones. Has a little bit of damage on his car, but has elected not to pit when many of the fast drivers did. Derek Presley is going to be on his outside, but he needs to watch out. Our pole sitter is restarting from 4th. Isaiah Gill in the 24 has found his way back up to the front group. He could be a very big threat here, depending on what kind of pace our top 2 have got. Getting ready to go green this time by. Our biggest wreck so far last time. Still nobody fully out of the race as everybody was able to come in and take repairs. And that is White, who is going to the end of longest line. He was given a penalty, hence why he is down on the low side and then coming back to the group. So last 2 drivers have waited a little bit before they went. Is Sean Jones going to follow a similar philosophy? We'll find out pretty soon. Here goes the Mustang pace car in. No, completely opposite. He is on it right away as the double lot starts to pick up speed. We get going racing on lap 36. Oh, but is that a missed shift? What happened? And now there's a big wreck across the line. Gill is involved in it. Presley is involved. A few other cars clipping them. I think that was McLeod who just got a piece of it. Oh my goodness.
I'm I think well, I have no idea exactly what happened. I don't think it was a missed shift, but maybe just slow to get up to speed with that damage, unfortunately. Here on the replay, we'll see.
After we watch this, can we get an onboard with the 99 of Chris Torres? Does a beautiful job avoiding things. Watch this. Car just doesn't go, and then he gets a touch from the 43. Few drivers making miraculous escapes.
Right here on board, yeah, see.
Whoa! Sees parts. Great stuff. A little bit of luck, a little bit of skill for the 99 to get up into third place. Interestingly, I was listening to the radio. I think you were too, because we were both trying to figure out what was happening. He says he did not miss a shift, Sean Jones.
Yeah, so it's two different stories essentially being told here, but regardless, back under caution. And looking, yeah, the 43 apparently did just get a much greater start, and I'd have to think that, of course, the damage may have played a little bit of effect to Sean Jones' restart, maybe a little bit of engine damage, judging by how much left side damage there is. But of course, even I'm as sure as anybody else. So, of course, regardless, back under caution once again, and gives the field a little bit of time to reset.
Here's what's going to be extra painful. And there you see it right there. They decided the 43 was the cause of the incident. He inherited first because of that. And now he gets moved to the very last spot on the lead lap, which is 8th position. So not the end of the world, but now he's got to do that all over again.
That's really unfortunate. But like you mentioned, luckily not the entire end of the world. Isaiah Gill actually is still back up in the top 3. So we'll see how this sorts out. Chris Torres, with a great avoidance, finds himself in 3rd place.
And we have a few drivers that are willing to do in-race interviews with us, including our current leader, Eric Johnson, in the number 14. Eric, welcome to the booth. Well, you're going to be restarting up at the front. No pressure there. But the man that has been fighting you for some of this, Isaiah Gill, is directly behind you, it seems.
Yes, I see that there, and it's kind of weird how that escalated so quickly. I'm not sure what happened there on the restart, but I'm excited here. Starting on the inside with the preferred line is going to be huge, but trying to see how that outside uses that side draft is going to be a big factor in how this works out. And with so many guys wanting to dive up to the bottom, who knows who's going to be there to help. So as long as we can get the help, I think we'll be good, but we'll see how this plays out.
And a correction for me, it seemed because of the damage that Gill had to duck into pit lane, so now is Chris Torres just behind you. How well is that high line actually working? Because it seems like we've seen a number of drivers hold on pretty well, but not many actually make the pass around the high side.
Yeah, for sure. It's tough because being on the outside, you really have to manipulate that side draft. So going down the straightaways, you can really see guys pulling in on each other and pulling out, and that's really just to manipulate that. But when you get in the corner, you got no other choice but to be down there sucked up on their door, which can tend to pull you back on the outside, making it hard to pass. But it can be done, just has to be done right, and you need a lot of help to do it.
Well, you still have a little ways to go. Best of luck here for the rest of the race, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you some more.
I appreciate it so much, and I want to say a big thank you to Key Property Services and United Roofing Solutions for doing a big help on the sponsorship this year.
The professional, that was Eric Johnson, our current leader, out in the number 14 that you see on screen right now. And we should be getting, I think, lights off this time by. And we mentioned Chris Torres is going to be starting next to him. Williamson on the inside of the second row, and Bede up in P4. Isaiah Gill is just coming out of pit lane right now. Remember, he used up his free repair, so now with a very damaged nose, he is going to be a lame duck out there without someone to draft with.
And sitting without someone to draft with is not entirely the best situation you really want to be in here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So we'll see how this goes as Gill tries to make his way around. He will, of course, be able to make his way back up to the end of the field, but it's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on as this race continues on.
Indeed, they are double files, so we're going back racing this time by. Still have all 13 cars. Nobody's given up the ghost quite yet, but there are plenty who have given up some bodywork, some top-end speed, and other various parts off of the car. Where does Gill slot back in? He'll come back in 8th spot, it appears. The reason we keep on focusing on him is he was our pole sitter, certainly looked fast, and disappointing to see that it's not likely he'll get a shot at the victory unless something crazy happens here in the last 25 laps. Okay, here we go once again. What kind of run is Johnson Jr. going to get? Mustang pace car off of turn 4 and into pit lane. Johnson's going to wait. He holds him, and now he accelerates away. Green flag is out for Eric Johnson Jr. in the 14 on lap 41. Behind him, Torres to the outside of A.J. Williamson. Cannot get down low enough. Maybe drops back a bit to look for a spot, but it's not there as the 7 of Bryce Bead causes him not to be able to duck low. The 18 of Jichanowski as well, and he's actually going to come together with Torres. He's up on his lid, and poor Isaiah Gill gets involved again with a little bit of contact. Cars flipping as McLeod is one of them up and over.
McLeod Peterson involved again in this crash as well. I don't think he got any major contact. Maybe he did, maybe suspension, but Peterson unfortunately again involved.
Well, this is starting to look a little bit like a case, Gary, of cautions breeding cautions. Everybody's close together. Everybody's a little bit antsy now. And boy, the cars were rolling over. The 88 of McLeod was one of those. Dichanowski was one of those. Chris Torres as well. And the 23 looks like just got a little bit of it. So we come back live. Front runners still unfazed as they were ahead of everything. It is now Johnson Jr., Williamson, and Bead, your top 3. And, well, that is a telling sign. They are ordering the drivers to restart single file on this next restart.
So a very interesting choice, but like you mentioned, cautions breeding cautions, and it does make sense to see, well, if they restart single file, it's a bit of a less chance to have cautions appear, since everyone will be, of course, single file for about the first 2 laps.
I think we might have had our first retirement. Ryan McLeod looks like he is done for the day. Chris Torres is sitting getting major repairs, so I'm not sure if we're going to see him back in this thing, as once again poor Isaiah Gill is down to get a few pieces of sheet metal banged on. And I think Dichanowski is joining him. Trying to see if they've given, is that Andy Johnson? No, Andy Johnson was given the EOL last time, so I don't think they've given the penalty for the cause of this wreck quite yet.
And that is correct. No one has been sent to the back of the line as of yet. And everything's probably still being figured out. But poor McLeod, I believe actually a few laps ago, it actually slid up to the outside wall after number 2, managed to hang on to it, but unfortunately he was caught up in this. And, well, I wouldn't be surprised if he's trying to at least repair what he can and before he uses that fast repair. But with him missing that front bumper, well, he's definitely going to be needing that fast repair.
That is Gill back out on track now. Dichanowski out ahead of him. Both of them are on the lead lap critically. So, I mean, being on the lead lap is the first step, I suppose.
And looking again, this is going to help out at the moment Eric Johnson Jr. in the point standings. Looking at through the field once again, I swear I did see him. There he is, Christopher White as well. At least on track physically ahead of Isaiah Gill, but I don't believe in scoring that he is ahead quite yet. In fact, he is by about 2 positions.
Torres already 3 laps down. He came into this race 5th in the points. And this will take him out of those top 5 for sure. Got a little ways to go here on this caution. We are down to 9 cars left on the lead lap, of which Gill is the final driver. Johnson Jr. still leads the way. Remember, we talked about Andy Johnson having to come his way back through the field. He's up to P5, so gained 3 positions since his EOL penalty.
Great recovery so far off of that first restart. And this one a little bit more difficult for Andy Johnson, but he at least does have a little bit of a better chance to get a draft run. And it's a little bit more forgiving for everybody as well. To get that draft run a little bit easier, get single filed out for at least a few laps, and then try and make some moves where possible.
As the pace car comes across the line, and it looks like lights are out, so we are going to get restarted here. That'll be on lap 46 out of a 65 lap race. Things have definitely slowed down here in the middle of today's event. While we had long green flag runs at the start, the cautions have suddenly been happening one after another, and we've been seeing lots and lots of damage on vehicles that won't have too much of a chance to compete for the victory.
Looking through right now, Dichinowski was in pit road only for about 34 seconds. So if I do remember correctly, that should be definitely enough for fuel, and maybe just about right side tires, maybe a full set as well. So the 18 only 2 laps as well on that set if he did take a new set. Same with Isaiah Gill.
So hopefully that fresh rubber will help him move forward. Let's see what kind of a start that the 14 is going to give him with a very different complexion. Doesn't have to worry about jumping Williamson. Williamson's actually giving him a lot of room there. He's got to be careful. If he hangs back too far, green flag is out. Oh, and it's such a huge checkup. Look in the back. That's a big old run from the number 13. That's Dagenstein. I'm not sure if the stewards are going to be happy about that one.
Well, the thing is, you are allowed to pass up on the outside before the start-finish line, but I believe Dagenstein did go before the actual field went. It's kind of like that the Kyle Busch situation, except Busch didn't catch the field until they crossed the line, and Dagenstein does let the field back by. So not entirely sure what that was, but regardless, everyone single filed out. The 45, I believe, actually 43, correction, Andy Johnson, gang shuffled back. He's got Peterson on his inside.
He's not going to like that. He's been trying to get these spots back to him. And 23 down on the low side, and the yellow and red is now by. So Andy Johnson, will he try and get the shot off the corner? He's looking at it. He's carrying the momentum as everybody stays low. 14, interestingly, opened up the low side for a little bit. I'm surprised he did that. The 2 would have had a chance to try and get his nose in.
Maybe a little bit daring considering on that move that Williamson had made earlier. Right down to the inside lane on the back straightaway, made it 3 wide, got by for the lead for that time. So right here on corner entry, it could be possible if he gets a little bit more draft, a little bit more momentum. Unfortunately, it's just not enough on this lap. It is possible for him to at least back up the corner a little bit, or back up the corner entry a little bit, and then try and get that run out of the quad oval exit.
A little bit of a shove down the back stretch from Williamson, trying to give the hurry up to the number 14 back behind them. Andy Johnson not giving up. In fact, he's just about cleared the 23 in some cases.
You see right here, great onboard shot. You see that availability there on the inside lane, but unfortunately it's just not possible for Williamson to get there, sitting directly behind the 14. Meanwhile, Bruce B just sitting here minding his own race, at least at the moment. Meanwhile, just behind him, Presley and Johnson side by side for 4th. Johnson trying to make the outside lane work.
Yeah, and he had the bottom open, but I think he had a little bit of talk with Presley. Presley told him to take the outside. Wonder if he intends to try and get behind him once he gets clear to see if they can make that work. They've got a bit of a gap back to the 18 of Dichinowski, so he could get up there. Let's see if he joins him. Well, hasn't yet.
I'm not sure anyone really wants to move up to the outside lane. And of course, right when I say that, well, guess who's up on the outside lane, except probably about the back half of the field. Oh, in the background, blowing his engine is Isaiah Gill, and that is his race over at least for this week. And he will not be able to get into that first place position on points as we ride on board here.
And see, yep, there it goes. Pop. And thankfully, nobody was behind him. He wasn't plugged in. So he just got to the bottom and shouldn't see a caution from that one. Oh, and look at this. AJ Williamson. You asked who wants the high side? Williamson does. And he's going to have help. Andy Johnson with a nice big shove.
And just like the first half of the race, it's side by side, 4 cars battling for the lead just about. Johnson on the inside, Williamson up top. Bede at least trying to figure out where to go, and Johnson just trying to throw his hat into the ring. Does he make it 3 wide? He doesn't, luckily. It looked like he was about to for a moment.
14 laps to go now. It's coming down to it as they come off of turn 2. Still trying to make that bump draft work. The 43 giving as much oomph as he can to the number 2. Down low, it is Bede trying to push the 14. Oh, but they come together at an awkward spot through the corner. He keeps the car underneath him, but now he loses the critical momentum, and the 2 is ahead.
I think the entire outside lane is about to get by that 14 of Johnson Jr., and Williamson does get by. So does Andy Johnson, and he doesn't, as the 14 of Eric Johnson Jr. is able to get back on that inside lane. He's got that draft now from the 2 on the inside lane.
Got scary for at least a moment. Eric Johnson Jr. back in it. He's under control at this point, and I wonder if we'll see Bede give him a little bit of a wider berth through the corners from here on out. He was the one that just clipped his rear bumper.
And just like that, the entire outside lane is relatively gone, and it's back again, at least in the form of the team of Dichinowski trying to follow that 43 machine, trying to help him out, give him a little bit of a shove and challenge for the lead down the back straightaway. But well, again, much like Super Speedway Racing, you don't want to give that second car on the inside lane any openings possible to try and move up and have him challenge for the lead. So Dichinowski pushes the bumper to the 43, and well, that does help out for the moment, but right here mid-corner, it's that inside lane very much heavily prevailing.
And I think we got snookered by the 24 of Isaiah Gill. He's back out on track. They only have the 1 spare car, so he must have saved that this whole race and finally used it now that his engine blew. The bad news is he's now 2 laps down since he didn't get to do it under caution.
Now, as well as the fact that he had to take a tow, he was able to get back to at least the start and just barely in the beginning of pit road as Bryce Bede nearly gets into the door of the 43. Same with the 2 of Williamson. He nearly gets into the door of Eric Johnson. So these cars getting very, very squirrely here with 10 laps to go at the start-finish line. But with Isaiah Gill, he did have to take a tow, unfortunately, so that's what lengthened his time. But that would explain why he did try and coast to get to pit road. Unfortunately, it was just not enough to spin in the back.
That's Dichinowski and Jones down into turn 1. I was just about to say that Dichinowski, he had to make a big lift because of that incident through 3 and 4. But then I think what started this is Jones clips the apron, and I think there you see he drifts up the hill.
Yeah, Jones tried to make a dive down to the inside, caught it just a little bit too much, and then tried to slide it, catch it, move up the racetrack. But unfortunately, he was carrying so much momentum. There he goes to try to get to the inside of Peterson, and unfortunately, just slides up and contacts the 18 of Dichinowski.
Don't think he was actually attempting anything because he was a lap down. So he wasn't racing anybody in that group. The unfortunate thing is it came out worse for Dichinowski. continues on.
Well, now this is the interesting point, the key point of the race is when it comes down to these final few laps.
Okay, so we've only got 7 cars on the lead lap. If you haven't taken your tires yet, and if you're one of the cars towards the back of that lead lap group, Gary, do you pit?
If I do have that one spare set of tires, most definitely would I head to pit road and try and get an advantage. Eric Jones, well, makes a squeak in that direction, but decides, well, no. And, well, much like pretty much the entire field, everyone decides to stay out.
So either nobody has tires left or nobody considers it worth it. It's on the lead lap. We're going to get restarted with, what, about a 5-lap shootout here? This is going to get very wild, and I don't know if they have a green-white checkers in this series. This could end under caution, potentially.
It could be about 6 to 5 laps left when we get back going green, but again, definitely the shootout style here coming into play.
You saw on the high side, the 24 got a lap back. Lucky Dog is in effect. He's still going to be a lap down. So he'll not be in it quite yet. And honestly, another caution's probably going to end the race. So Gill's effectively out of this one, just racing with Sean Jones, who is a lap down currently.
I'm pretty sure I say Gill just hoping that something happens to at least looking back again. Well, Chris White unfortunately did have some issues earlier on in this race, and he was not able to get back in his virtual car. So that effectively rules Chris White out. So now it's essentially battle for first place in points between Gill and Johnson Jr. But, well, with Johnson Jr. being not only in second, but also in the lead lap, and Sean Jones in line for the next wave round, it's going to be quite a restart here for the 24.
What a different race this has been from the first one with the legends at Concord. We saw drivers come up and down through the field, and we have seen that to a degree, but at the same time, Williamson, Johnson Jr., both of them have been up there much of the day. Bede, even though he didn't start up there, he in fact qualified in 8th. Once he got up there, I'm trying to think of the time we've seen the 7 outside of the top 3 in a while.
Well, aside from the start of the race, I'm not entirely sure, but also there's of course Andy Johnson started 4th, currently still sits 4th, so on paper relatively the same, relatively no change and nothing interesting happening. But just behind him, Derek Presley in the 4 machine started in 12th place and is currently sitting at the end of the top 5.
Waiting for the lights to go off here. And I think if we get them off this time, it will indeed be 5 to go at the green. Let's watch and see if the Mustang pace car is going to get us going this time by. And what will AJ Williamson do on this restart now that he's managed to take the top spot away from Eric Johnson Jr.? As we come down to the line, what kind of shootout are we going to have here? Lights are off. 5-lap shootout for the end.
Now, the one thing that AJ Williamson needs to do is immediately take to the very top lane, take that car, put it right up against the outside wall, so he doesn't give anyone else behind him, say Eric Johnson, any type of advantage when coming to the green.
As we ride on board with our leader currently, AJ Williamson, looking back at those behind him in the fields. A hungry pack who's probably just as interested in taking a victory as he is here in round 2. He's only got to hold on for 5 more laps, or potentially until a caution if we get one. nearly over here today for round 2. As we get ready for the Mustang pace car to peel into pit lane. AJ Williamson, what has he got underneath him? He's been competitive. At times he's made the aggressive moves he needs to. He's holding it. And green flag is out. He waited a long time for it. AJ Williamson is off and away. The 14 does not get a jump. Is this going to be like super speedway racing? Is he going to swallow him up and be able to slingshot by?
It could be possible. Don't count out the 7 of Bryce Bead or the 43 of Andy Johnson as they make their way through turns 1 and 2 down back straightaway. Already Johnson looking to take at least that 3rd place for his own self, side by side for 3rd, but Bead does have at the moment the preferred lane. And well, interestingly enough, AJ Williamson taking the more traditional line around Charlotte on the back straightaway, taking the high side, arcing it into the corner.
Start to pick up speed here, coming across the start-finish line. 4 to go now. And here is where Eric Johnson Jr. starts to gain. He also takes that traditional line, swinging it out, trying to carry his momentum into the corner. See if he can get this shot off of it. He's looking, and he's going to have to take the high side. Oh, but he gives a little bit of a tap to the 2.
I think Williamson may have moved up just a bit off turn number 2, but regardless, here comes Bryce Bead down to the inside now. And well, look at this, the 43 of Johnson, the 4 Presley lurking in the background if anything does happen, and the 14 gets loose on the outside, trying to squeeze the 43 down, and it's not going to work. Trying to squeeze the 7 down correction, and that's going to shuffle the 14 back.
I thought we were going to have another wreck right there. Great job by everybody involved. Well, this is good news for Williamson, because it seems that Johnson Jr. has lost his momentum, but behind them, the 43 is given a big shove to the 7. A 3-car train. Can they handle it? That looks like they're steady, but they got to back out of it by the corner. They're still pushing pretty hard. And this is now bringing in Presley into the equation.
Presley just lurking if anything does happen. The 43 of Johnson trying to peek down to the inside of Bead for that 2nd place position. 2 laps to go at the stripe this time by. And well, right now, Williamson, all he has to do is just keep those left side tires on that white and blue line right on the inside.
And poor Eric Johnson Jr. has nobody working with him. Nobody willing to go up to the high side. He is gaining a little bit down the backstretch, but he needs to be side by side with the 2, not the 7. As he almost drifts up into him. Bead getting a little bit loosey-goosey into the corner. White flag is out. 1 lap that the number 2 has to survive up at the front. Does he have any friends, or is this every man for himself?
Into turns 1 and 2, near contact as Johnson nearly slid into Johnson Jr., 43 nearly sliding into the 14. And well, what the 7 Bryce Bead needs is just a very strong chrome horn.
He's going to get into the back of him. The 43 might get into the back of the 7. He does. Tries to hold on to the car. We got no caution from here if they start to wreck. 43 drifting way up high, but this is all happening behind AJ Williamson, who is going to take the win with 2nd place just barely going to Eric Johnson Jr. as they slam doors up to the finish. What a run there, those final 5 laps. Glad to see we got great racing in to complete round 2 here. We're going to take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so stick around. Welcome back to Charlotte Motor Speedway. Round 2 of the South Sound Speedway E-Series was won by A.J. Williamson. Eric Johnson Jr. tried very hard on that last green flag run to see if he could challenge him, but with no help on the high side, he even admitted on the radio after the race that he couldn't do it that way. Bryce Bead was beside him at the line as the two came together, but he had to settle for third. Unfortunately, Andy Johnson finished fourth today with Derek Presley, a great climb from 12th to P5. Jeff Peterson took sixth, and the last car on the lead lap was Dichanowski back there in P7. Isaiah Gill, a lap down. That's got to be frustrating knowing the pace that he had. In eighth position, Sean Jones was ninth, and then Christopher White rounds out your top 10.
Scott Dagenstein, unfortunately, not able to finish along with Chris Torres and Ryan McLeod, rounding out that 13-car field here for tonight's event.
Like we've got second place ready to talk to us. We talked to him a little bit earlier in the race. Eric, we heard you on the radio. It seems like you got a little bit lonely up on the top.
Yeah, you hate to see it, but I couldn't ask for any better result there. I mean, last year we finished flipping over the start-finish line, and to have a good, clean finish, it was just a blast to do. But yeah, I'm very surprised the 43 didn't go with me on the high side there. I think we could have got it, and I did everything I could to side draft, but this Key Property Services street stock here was definitely a blast to drive tonight.
It looked like it was a lot of fun out there. You tended to be hanging out up around that front for much of the race. I don't think there's many times that you slipped down the order. Was that critical to you, keeping that clean air up in front?
Absolutely. I think these cars tend to get really aerotight when you're behind somebody. And you could see that there a couple times with the 43 trying to push me. He would slide up coming through the tri-oval. So that's a big factor here. But yeah, I just couldn't be any happier for consistency back-to-back weeks, and getting a better finish than last week was definitely the goal. So I'm pretty happy with that, and big congrats here to AJ.
Understandable. What's it like trying to switch, though, from such different cars and tracks? Last week was almost the antithesis to this one.
Yeah, I think it definitely brings out the driver in a lot of these guys. It changes it up every week and really just adds a lot of different characteristics from track to track, and really makes me excited. It's definitely a big thing for us to really pull in as many different kinds of drivers as we can across the Northwest. So trying to change that up, it definitely keeps you on your toes, keeps you learning every week, which I think is really important for a series like this. Make sure you keep people humble and keep people trying to get better and better every week.
He is showing who is versatile. Well, congratulations on a second place today, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you next week.
I appreciate it. You guys have a wonderful night.
Was Eric Johnson, who finished second, and in fourth place it was Andy Johnson, as Gary's caught up with him.
And here with the driver of the 43, on paper, not the best day, Andy, but you still did an incredible job to fight your way to stay there in that fourth place position, and just what an incredible race it was.
It really was. It was a lot of fun. I want to apologize to Sean there on the restart for getting into him. I'm not sure what happened. I just went back and watched a replay, and he had a lot of damage, so I just don't know if that was holding his car back from getting going or what. But other than that, it was a lot of fun. Good. I just couldn't quite get anyone to jump up in front of behind me up there on the top there. Otherwise, I think I had something for the top couple guys there. But fourth place was a great run. Missed last week, and looking forward to the rest of the series.
Well, with this series, I was actually about to ask, with this series in general having so many different types of car and track combinations, what are your thoughts with how this concept of a league is going? Because this is definitely so far absolutely incredible to see.
Oh, I love it. It's something me and Eric Jr. put together. He's my brother. We sat there and we penciled out a schedule for over about an hour. It took us about an hour to put a schedule together. And I think that the tracks and the cars that we have coming up over the next few weeks are going to be really, really cool.
Well, we are going to go ahead and let you go. Thanks for giving us the time to talk to you, and we hope to talk to you next week.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, guys.
That is Andy Johnson finishing in fourth place, and then we'll pass it right back to Joe Peak, who is standing by with Bryce Bead.
A podium for Bryce today, and a tense battle to the line, though. You and Eric Johnson banging doors all the way to the finish. What are your feelings about that?
Oh, it was definitely a close race. I did not expect to do so well. It definitely the cautions really messed me up. I really had a good chance to win it, but once I knew that caution came out there on lap 10, it definitely sucked. But I was going for the second place, and just those last 2-3 laps, I mean, it was just banging after banging, and to keep it without spinning, it was close, very close.
Seemed like a bit of a dark horse today. You started back in eighth, but once you climbed up to the front, it seemed rare that we saw you slip out of amongst the top runners. What was your secret to get yourself in there and then not leave?
The secret was just to hug the inside line. I just played it really safe. I hugged the inside line, and they once the tires started wearing, they would start to go up on the turns. Start to groove up, and I just stick a nose in there every single position. And then once I was up there, I mean, I was just set, and I was just doing the same thing over and over again.
Very well. Next round is going to be ARCA cars at the old version of Phoenix. Are you looking forward to that?
Yes, I love the ARCA cars. They're so much fun, and they take so much skill. A lot of it is race with your foot. They spin really easy. They're like driving on ice, and I just love it.
Best advice is make sure and check the brakes before you get going. But,
Exactly.
congratulations on a podium today, sir, and we'll hopefully talk to you at the next round.
Thank you.
That was Bryce Bead, third place today. And we're going to close that one out then with a big thank you to our sponsors, of course, Key Property Services. They can be found at kpsinc.net. And United Roofs. Their website is simply unitedroofs.com. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast. You can see them listed here on your screen, along with June Lalonde. If you want to contact her and find out how to get some of her work, you can see it right there on the screen at her Bandcamp. Thanks to the team today, Gary, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Our social media outlets include Twitter, which is at GSR Channel, Facebook, Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. We got a merchandise store linked in the description below, simply at gsrc.storeenvy.com. And make sure and subscribe to the channel while you're down there, because you won't want to miss the next race, which we mentioned is heading over to Phoenix in the ARCA cars. That'll be Saturday, November 7th at 10:15 p.m. Eastern. We have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.